Okay. In the meantime, just a little bit introduction. This is the last session of the winter school. Today is dedicated completely to you, so to the students. You will introduce us the work that the report that you did, and we will take the feedback and also your comments for the future step of the next edition of the summer school. I think at the end we can consider that we are really glad and happy because we see a very good participation of all of you. We are very curious to to see your presentation now, and we are very interested in your use case. Lucia, do you have the list of the presentation?
Yes, so we'll start. Ziming will join us later. Okay. Yes, we can start in an alphabetic order. Otherwise, if somebody is still not ready, we can go on. Andrea, is Andrea here? Yes. So I will share my screen with her presentation.
Do we have an order of the presentations? So when?
Yes, I have the alphabetic order of the participant, but if you for some reason prefer to go before and after, you can just tell me.
Sorry, Lucia, alphabetic order with names or surnames?
Here, select with name.
Names.
It would be nice to see the list, but okay. So.
Sorry?
It would be nice to see the list.
Okay.
To see how many and.
Okay. So in the meantime that Andrea will talk, I will prepare it and I will share it with you here in the chat. Okay.
Lucia, sorry, can I ask, are you going to pass the slides or do I have to share my?
I'm going to share my screen in order to avoid the changing screen so many times among you, so that I have all presentations here.
Good.
Okay. You just tell me next slide, next slide.
That's the last one. That's good.
Okay. Please, Andrea, you can start.
Okay, my presentation is on fair data for the management plan of IEO. As you may already know, I'm not an expert in computer science. I'm more in Horizon 2020, and so this is a requirement for Horizon 2020, and especially for the next framework program, Horizon Europe. So next slide, please. Okay, my introduction is that at IEO we have a large amount of data. It's a marine and oceanographic data. This is and there is a growing necessity to make this data available for different reasons, and this necessity is mainly because the funding research agencies require so. So, for example, Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, and some national as well. And as well, there's an economic point of view that, for example, the publications, the article publications require a place where you publicize your data. that is a permanent place, such as we have learned with the FAIR data requirements. So when some researcher need to publicize their data for an article, this needs to be in a place where it's secured and accessible all the time. And there's also different requirements from government agencies, for example, directives, environmental data that is compulsory to make available for different reasons, but especially if they are important environmental data. So these all requirements and necessities will shape how a data management plan in an institution will have to be designed. So next slide, please. Here I prepare just a proposal for the management plan at my institution, which is just several points where we will be presenting, we will be probably doing in my institution. So first, we will need to institutionalize a FAIR data policy with a FAIR, of course, all the names of FAIR, adequately organized for the data that will serve us as an internal guide. So our researchers will need to use this data policy to to store and to curate and to provide the authentication in line with this data policy. But it's also a public statement for the external entities and to make public to the work that we are going to be public and for all. So from the repository that we have, so it's number 2, we already have a repository for research papers, and we are already providing a DOI, which is the URL that we provide for data, for those data needed to validate the research papers in the repository. This is also useful for editors, for those articles that are going to be published in open data publications outside. We use this DOI to collect the data and present the data in our institutional repository. We use Dublin Core metadata and the possibility for to advance this data will be to select different schema instead of Dublin Core and another one that imply that the quality and the level of description of this data will be enhanced. Next slide, please. So the proposal, then we will need the accessible metadata catalog, which will be, which is already uploaded to the internet, but this metadata infrastructure will need to have all the possible databases that we have. We have CDataNet, EMBOTnet, fisheries data sources, and some visualization of maps. Next, and the possibility for advance will be to establish a control vocabulary to make queries more useful for the users. So, and as well, next slide, please, now. Establish the security aspects and authorization that needs to be done with a thoughtful thinking of who and what will be able to access, and for which time frame, etc. And then our data will have a policy for acquisition and curation that is already in place, mainly because European standards have been put in place for all this data. And the possibility to advance forward will be that the display of the fair data can be enhanced with the use of semantics. Next slide. We have a lot of data sources, and they have been already normalized, and we would like to have the best use of this open data for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now the list will be published in on the training platform, ENVRI training platform. I will send you in a few minutes. And the next one is Barbara.
Excuse me, Lucia, just a quick question. When will we be commenting from the instructor point of view?
We can choose to comment after the slide or the presentation, or at the end.
Yeah, because I have a quick question.
Okay. So please.
Or observation. I just so that was an interesting presentation, and it shows, I think, a very common case now that these repositories that have previously sort of been working in their own small world or to their own users, etc. You are now feeling obliged to open up and organize things in a standardized manner, and I wish you all the luck with that. I found it intriguing that you had some reasons why you were doing this now, and primarily you were citing that your funders were putting on pressure for you to make data more fair, more accessible, etc. To me, if I had been in charge of this, my first argument would have been to make research better, to open up completely new ways of researchers using the data that you have in order to make new research discoveries, etc. Is that an argument or a thinking that is also guiding your institute?
Of course, this is also an argument, but in fact, our institutional situation was very precarious. We will be integrated in a bigger institution because of several problems that we had this past year. So one of the problems was the lack of personnel. So in fact, when you lack personnel and when you don't have the resources available for making data available for researchers, you just do as you already have done for the previous years. You go on however you can, and but we know this is one of the compulsory things that we have to do, and also in aim of the good research. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the explanation. I would just recommend that you actually add this making science or enhancing the possibilities for science. I would use that as an official argument, even though that might not be the complete truth in terms of priority. But please do that, because I think that will give a more positive feeling about your institute's work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, so we can go on with Barbara. Please, over to you.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, I'm very happy that I could at least attend a few days of this winter school. I am heavily involved in different projects and could not attend to all these courses, but I will certainly listen to the recordings of those which I missed. I will present the takeaways for my PhD research I'm doing right now. The title of that PhD is Towards Fairer Observational Data in Ecology, Technical and Social Considerations in the Development of a Semantic Interoperability Framework for Observable Properties. As you know, or have already introduced myself, I'm a landscape ecologist and geoinformation scientist, yeah, I had to develop my technical skills only by working. But last year I decided to start again with my studies at the University of Twente to improve these technical skills. Yeah, the focus is ecoinformatics, and I'm doing this research with Luis Bonino at the University of Twente. So please, next slide. So what is the research problem? Yeah, I work in the field of ecology and biodiversity, and I'm heavily involved in ENVRI, ENVRI, and in the ELTER research infrastructure, long-term ecosystem research. And we all observe natural phenomena and try to capture this information. Most of this information is captured in tables like this one. But the way we capture this information differs very much from research infrastructure to research, or also from site to site, from scientist to scientist. This differs in describing complexity of parameters, in providing data semantic for specific domains, in indicating the admitted value of attributes, in accounting or not for the specification of units. So the problem is that there is an inherent lack of semantic interoperability in most of the environmental observation research still today. Please, next. So this is just an example how you could improve the description of this tabular data. You could label the headers of this table with conceptual semantic concepts deriving from existing semantic artifacts. And these and the values within the table can also derive from existing lists, code lists, but also these code lists can be or should be organized as semantic artifacts like thesauri taxonomies. So here we can identify a feature of interest, so a specific object, target object in nature, like a specific tree, because here the data is about the height of a tree, and height would be the observable property. There is also the indication of a unit here in meter. Then we have also information about time and the sensor used and the procedure. And you can identify here different items that could relate to existing semantic concepts. Thank you. Next. So the challenge of my PhD is that I'm working, studying, and I'm a mother of 4, and I'm trying to do everything at once. And I'm involved in quite a lot of projects. So in ENVRI, where I am responsible for the fairness assessment of research infrastructures. And the ENVRI is important also for my PhD because the objective of this initiative, this project, is to build a federated system of harmonized subdomain RI-specific systems of fair data policies and management, access platforms, and virtual research environments. Yes, and below that, so to achieve this, also a harmonized way in describing observable properties is needed. So I hope that what I am trying to achieve here will also be taken up in this research infrastructures. A second pillar is the IADOPT working group, which is a Research Data Alliance working group that I am co-chairing, and I initiated 3 years ago. Exactly to build a conceptual framework to support interoperability between existing observable property terminology. I did this because I am in charge of semantic artifact called ENVRI, Environmental Thesaurus, for the ELTER research infrastructure. And in ELTER, there's we are working we have now a project called ELTER Plus, where we try to achieve an interoperability of ELTER standard observation variables. And for those, I should help to establish a framework and a procedure how to enable this, aligning these efforts with the IADOPT efforts. So my PhD work is a little bit contributing to different initiatives. And I thought really that writing a PhD at my age makes only sense if it is taken up, or I'm highly, or in other words, I'm highly motivated to do this work because it makes a lot of sense to contribute to this, what is happening. 10 years ago, this would have not been so easily achievable, but the wish or the potential now is really great, also because of the FAIR principles. So I will complement, hopefully, the ENVRI activities, support the IADOPT working group, which is only building a conceptual framework. I'm trying to implement that in the ELTER context. Thank you. Next. So the research activities of my PhD work include, first of all, the study of nature of in situ environmental observations. Then I will also analyze the observable property descriptions as they are done now, looking at the existing ontologies, models, but also vocabularies, taxonomies, thesaurus used. But this study, this analysis is very much based on the existing survey we did in IADOPT, and we could gather more than 100 terminologies here. Then I will use the outcome of the IADOPT group, which is working now heavily on building a framework for the observable properties. The framework will be more a model, and I will specify it in form of an ontology. And after that, I will build a rule-based description mechanism guaranteeing consistency with the framework. The framework will not only involve the observable property, but also other aspects like protocol and provenance of observation. Therefore, I call it observation interoperability framework. So it's an extended framework. And I will work on the governance model for this framework and implement the framework in the data life cycle. and validate it with data sets from the ELTA Europe infrastructure. Next, please. So the output will be in the third step an ontology. In the fourth, I will build a tool for data annotation, so application for doing this data annotation with recommended terminologies. And for the sixth step, I will build a workflow. Next, please. So it means that I could really improve my insights in semantics. In one of the first lectures about semantics, listening again to the principles, the foundations needed to consider when building an ontology. Then I will certainly also consider the security issues I've heard when building this application for data annotation. And for the workflow, I already knew before that I will do it, but what I've heard about Jupyter Notebooks encouraged me to go further in this direction. So I will implement Jupyter Notebooks for showing implementation, how data can be annotated with this IADOPT framework. And I will also use this, I think, for the validation, because I want to demonstrate if you use a fair workflow for annotation from the very beginning on, you can save a lot of time trying to combine data when already annotated in a fair way. So thank you very much. I learned a lot, and I hope you could enjoy it a little bit.
Thank you, Barbara. Any comments, questions?
Yes, I have a one question. Thank you, Barbara, for your presentation. It's about the contribution that you plan to have on this rule-based description mechanism. So what do you actually mean by rule-based there? Are you planning to use some I don't know, rule engines, or it's just to have a methodology with specific?
No, I will implement Shackle rules.
Okay, great.
Yeah, but I'm not, so I'm an ecologist, yeah, but I'm trying to get more technical skilled. So I hope to learn this. I think it's also not too challenging, but what we did in IADOPT, we tried to recognize specific patterns, and out of these patterns, we could create rules so that we can suggest appropriate terminologies to annotate data.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah,
good
but
approach.
I'm not sure if you will get there, but I will do my best.
Thank you.
So you can also support us. So IADOPT is a huge group of 100 scientists, and we are very happy to get help.
Okay, thanks. I'll have a look.
So Barbara, this is very interesting work, and I just wanted to say that in ICOS we are now starting to look more closely to the IADOPT work to see how we can benefit from that. So
Maggie,
I'm not sure.
I have seen that you've registered. Thank you.
It is, so we'll see how if we can be actively engaged or just passively using your stuff. That remains to be seen, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, and I will certainly come back to Claudio because I learned a little bit Jupyter Notebook, and I tried to do my exercises and had already my first small problems, but I'm sure I will overcome, and I hope I can come back if I have some issues.
You are always welcome, as of course everyone else who has been in the school.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and now Camille, It's your turn. Is Camille there? I see her in the, yes, no, okay. I see your microphone on, but we are not able to hear you.
Cedric here jumping in. Is it good if I go like now because, oh, sorry.
Can you hear me
because I
now?
have a meeting like cross-controlled. Yes, Camille, we can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now or?
No, yes. We can hear you. Okay, okay. She has problem. We can go on with the group of Cedric, Lorian, Salvador, and Mark.
Yes.
Okay. Just 1 second to take the presentation. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So please,
Okay, yeah, so our presentation will be about the semantic web usage. Next slide, please. Our use case is based on 2 long-term environmental projects that we have running in VLISC called the Ocean Sampling Day and the Autonomous Reef Monitoring System. And in the free time we had, we tried to develop a ontology using temporal, spatial, and species data. We also tried to put genomics data in there, but it was quite difficult to do that. And next slide, please. For this, we used, of course, the suggested Stanford web environment. I'm going to quickly run over all these. We created some classes, some properties, and I don't know what else, some individuals. And we quickly found out that we couldn't, or at least with the knowledge that we have, we couldn't import external ontologies, which was a bit of a hassle because, like, we're not going to put all the marine regions in there by hand, of course. So you can like skip over like the next 4 slides if you want, because that's like all the work we done. Yeah, next one. I think it's slide 7 that it's start to get interesting again. Sorry. After we like played around a bit in the Stanford web environment, we exported the ontology and visualized it using the link down below, where we found out that we have like quite the few loose ends, as you see in the red circles, which weren't that noticeable in the web environment itself. So in the end, we imported the DCAT. Oh, next slide, please. So in the end, we imported the DCAT ontology to compare a bit to our ontology what actually the complexity was that we created. And we found out that with the DCAT ontology, we might get further with getting to annotate our data, not the metadata of the data sets we're going to create for Ocean Sampling Day and ARMS, but also the data that is described within these data sets. because we want to have fully interoperable cross data set comparisons between, for instance, the temperature or salinity or name it. Now we can't have that directly in this because we harbor such a diverse schemata of data that it will be quite the undertaking to make it all interoperable with each other. And thus we want to use like the different tools you described to us to make that possible. But for now, like the only thing that was the limiter was the lack of implementing external ontologies using the Stanford Web environment. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the lectures and the information you gave us.
Thank you, Cedric. Are there any questions, comments?
I have one question, if I can.
Yes, please.
What kind of future challenges or issues do you expect when you will be able to hopefully integrate the genomics data sets in your framework?
Is the diversity of, for the genomics part, is the diversity of analysis that can be done on genomic data.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, it will be a challenge. Hopefully, we find an ontology that fully describes all the possible ways to handle genomic data, not only like normal sequences, but also like Oxford nanopore sequences and like all the how would you say it? All the workflows that can be done on genomic data, and how to implement that, how to also give that to users that download our data. And as for old data, it will be a challenge because of it's only in CSV files that it's in our databases now. So like cleaning that up, making it all interoperable will also be a challenge. A lot of manual work probably. But hey, it wouldn't be a challenge if it wasn't a challenge.
Of course, it wouldn't be any funnier otherwise.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
Yeah. I mean, about the genomics point of view, so the scientific community has already established some standards when it comes to metadata, and we'll get to it when it will be our turn for the presentation. I hope it will be useful in that regards.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now maybe also Diego Bermejo has some problem with the microphone. I don't know if you want to try. Otherwise, we can go on with the others. You want to try? We can go on, okay. So Diego Brambilla and Iana. Here. Yeah, the presentation.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good morning. We make the presentation together. And me and Diego, we wanted to show you a bit the point of view of an environmental scientist that might be interested in analyzing environmental DNA, for example, for describing biodiversity of microbial aquatic communities. And as you see on the left upper part, the first step would be to sample seawater samples from the ocean or from a lake. Then in the next step, you would extract DNA, amplify it, and thanks to our next generation sequencing techniques, you obtain big data sets, which are tons of sequences for every sample. This is very challenging, and with bioinformatics, we are able to give these sequences, which are nothing different than just the DNA code, we are able to give it, by fusing it with metadata, a biological sense. So as a result, you can obtain such bar plots like you see on the upper right part on the presentation, which can describe the microbiome community in different samples. But as a researcher, you have to ask yourself before you start with this kind of experiments, which are the minimum information required about any sequences. And Diego will explain us a little bit what this means.
Okay. Yeah, we can go to the next slide now. Thank you. So what the scientific community represented by the Genomic Standards Consortium did was to establish exactly a minimum requirement for describing the environmental context, and this has brought to the preparation of a minimum information about any sequence, which is actually called, in the acronyms, it is called MIXES, where the X stands for any. So what MIXES is, and in this slide we have a representation of each and every component of MIXES, is a framework for the description of any genetic and genomic sequence in the form of checklists. And by checklist here, I mean a set of descriptors that help to describe the context of data, that is the metadata. So MIXES, you can see it from the, you can see it in the first row. MIXES actually consists into 3 separate smaller checklists. We have MIX for the genomes, MIMS for the metagenomes, and then MeMarks for marker genes. And there are also other checklists currently under development, like for agroecosystems and host parasites, so different kind of environments, but they all are about description of all of these contexts surrounding the sampling of genetic material, and all of them have some properties. So below the first row, we have the shared descriptors, which of course means that they have a similar set of mandatory and recommended descriptors. So they basically differ mainly in terms of which optional attribute can be added. But also each checklist has its own specific descriptors. And so in case we would consider to describe some research coming from the sequencing of marker genes, we would go for the MeMarks, highlighted in red here, and which has shared descriptors, pretty much like any other sample checklist. As a specific descriptors, you have the group related to the target gene, and then since usually both me and Jana have, we do research on the water environment, when it comes to the environmental package, we select the checklist about the water environment. In fact, the core MIXES team developed some environmental MIXES checklists that are specific for all of the environment listed in the last row, applicable environmental packages. So you also have environmental specific checklists. And we can go to the next one. Nice, thank you. So also platforms, they have developed a way to help you submitting sequences. I mean, more like data. So there are data banks online which allow you to submit your metadata together with your data interactively online. There are platforms with interactive windows, and in here we report some images about the ENA platform. The point is that all of this is possible because at each and every of the term of those checklists are selected from ontologies, and these ontologies have been issued by the International Nucleotide Sequence Database Collaboration, which in acronyms is INSTC, which has proposed them to the major genetic data banks out there. ENA is no exception, but also NCBI and GeneBank. So in here, taking ENA as an example, you can, when it comes to the metadata submission, which is a mandatory part of the submission of your sequences, when it comes to the description of metadata, the website provides you with a list, pretty much like the one in figure, a table that's with mandatory and optional descriptor to fill in. And the interesting thing here is that you can upload the descriptors, and because they are also linked to ontologies, each and every descriptors you provide, it will be automatically validated in real time, thus making the submission of your data and metadata automatic and as quick as possible. On the left, you can see that basically it all comes down to a spreadsheet that user need to fill in, but users can alternatively download an XML file which actually carries the same schema that you have in the checklist, and you might as well prepare all of the information in this XML file and then upload it, and once again it will be automatically validated. So this is also one of the perks that not just ENA but other data banks have in common. And so the use of these these standards in the description of the data and metadata. In these cases, we have presented mixes for the genetic and genomic data. They enhance the ability to make the genetic data sets available to the scientific community, and so and thus making it easier to confront each other when it comes to issues on genetic diversities, or genetic diversity about ecosystems in the ever-changing biosphere we are currently living in. And that's all for our presentation. Thanks for the attention.
Thank you. Are there any comments for Diego and Jana?
Yes, Cedric here. The ontologies that you refer to, can they be found on ENA itself? Because it is handy to have the XML schema to prepare beforehand. But if you don't have, for instance, the right ontologies at hand, you can easily fill in wrong data.
yeah, so actually it's easier to submit data and prepare them interactively because the selection of attribute is guided. Yeah,
Okay.
and as you said before, of course, if you prepare everything on an XML file, you need to edit this file, so you won't have the perks of a restricted selection among terminologies. But so especially in case of ENA, I'm not sure about other data banks like NCBI, but ENA has also an ontology lookup service, which is called OLS, and it is a separate website that contains the biomedical ontologies that ENA directly refers to. So this also is within the scope of this INSDC. So this big effort behind the standardization of metadata. Every time I need to check what INSDC stands for because it's such a long acronymus, but it basically is the where is it? So the consortium behind the standardization of these metadata schema.
Okay, thank you. It's already good to know that there is an international standard among all the most of the data banks that harbor nucleotides information and or genomic information, and it's good to know where to find those ontologies now, because it would make it much easier to fill in that XML too. Not via the interactive window, but also prepare it beforehand. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Two things to keep in mind is that, I mean, on one hand, it's very important, as they say, not to reinvent the wheel. So not trying to come up with something that has already been established. And yeah, on the other hand, it's, I mean, all of these ontologies can be looked up. There are appropriate services for that. So this should help the metadata submission, which for our presentation we have only covered the metadata concerning the environment, but also other metadata will be asked during the submission. There was just not enough time to explain all of the metadata covered as part of a data submission process.
Okay, I'll look further into it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Okay, we can try now again with Camille. So we can see if her microphone now is working, otherwise we will go on.
Hello everyone, can you hear me now?
Perfect.
It's a very short presentation, but because, well, I think it was a very interesting school, but it was not exactly, I mean, I'm not exactly in the right business, I would say. So yeah, if you can just go to the next slide. So I just really to kind of sum up what I learned for me for the semantics and cloud computing, it was really new and it's not going to be very useful in my daily job, but I learned some new idea. And for me, it's kind of interesting because I can understand what some of my colleagues in the IT job are doing and maybe, help them later on, but right now not in the daily life. And for the metadata and the virtual environment, it was more useful for me in my daily basis, mostly the virtual environment. Yeah, on the next slide. So just a short example for the metadata. I don't do metadata every day, but we had this project when we did that we had to create, to choose a format for a file, and also we did the metadata. And I think, we did that a few years ago, and I think now with what I learned and knowing that there is these standards, we could definitely do a better job of doing this metadata. And so I hope that's kind of the stuff I learned in that class. And the last slide. Yeah, and then yeah, so thanks. So I followed the webinar, in fact, in September, and so that's when I began to using the Jupyter Notebook. So so yeah, just an example of what I've been doing now. That thanks to this these classes, I've been working more on this virtual environment and maybe thinking about this fair sale later on when my work is more completed on that development. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. Are there questions or comments for Camille? If not, I'm going to the next one. Sorry. The next are Elisa, Nicola, and Piero.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. It's Piero talking. I will present on behalf of my colleagues. So this is a short example of how we could develop a new ontology. We didn't go too much into the details of the classes, instances, and slots, but more on the theoretical framework of an ontology to help us conducting our analysis to investigate plant and lichen association. We are part of a research group of plant ecologists, so this is one of our typical topics. Okay, so let's suppose we have these 4 research questions. The first is, how are the plant lichen associations distributed? Moreover, which are these plant lichen associations? And how are the functional traits, so those features describing the life strategies of the organisms, distributed in space and time? And the third question is, how is the distribution of these associations affected by the climate? And in turn, we can also answer to how these functional traits are distributed according to climate. Okay, and finally, how the richness of these 2 groups are related, and which is the richness of the associations in space. So next, please. In order to answer this kind of question, we need 5 classes of information. The first, which is the backbone of all these kind of studies, is the taxonomy, so the names of the species, their identity. The second one are the geographical coordinates, where these phenomena are happening. And moreover, we have the functional traits, so these attributes, these features, they could be either quantitative, so we have a continuum of measurements, or qualitative, so we have some feature. It could be, I could have a sexual reproduction or an asexual reproduction, for instance. And these are the functional traits describing how the species behave. The fourth class is the climate, so mainly data about the temperature and precipitations, the annual means, the total, the monthly means, and the variation, and so on. And finally, we have the satellite-based indices, so information we take from the remote sensing about the status of the vegetation. This kind of information we can get from multispectral images. And all these questions, in order to be answered, should be inserted within a flow of knowledge, inside a base of knowledge. For this, we're going to develop an ontology. Yes, we could have reused another one probably. Within Darwin Core, we should have found most of the classes, or most of the ontology we would have needed, but for the sake of the assignment, we suppose to develop a new one. So next, please. So about the first question, we can answer to this question just by developing the first classes. The first is the taxonomy in green. You can see we have the plant taxonomy and the lichen taxonomy, kind of a mirror. For both of them, we have the taxon, so the name of the species. For instance, you have a tree, it could be Fagus sylvatica, for lichen it can be Lobaria pulmonaria. And we have also the synonyms. For each of these, we can have a number of synonyms from 0 to hundreds. And finally, we have a unique ID, which is kind of the same of the taxon, so a unique identifying number for the plant and for the lichen. And the plant-lichen association is made up by the unique pair of these two ID, okay? And in order to answer on where these associations are distributed, we can link these plant-lichen associations, so these pairs of IDs, to distribution data, to geographic data. So we have for each association we observe, we have the ID of this particular record, which has also a couple of coordinates, so the latitude and longitude. Next, please. So to answer the second question, we need to insert another class, which is the functional traits in blue, the plant functional traits and lichen functional traits. Again, we have the same situation for the two group of organisms. For the plant functional traits, we have the idea of the single functional traits observed. We have here we're supposed to use reproductive functional traits to study this phenomena. So we have the type of reproduction, sexual reproduction is a sexual reproduction, and so on, more specific cases, and which is the taxon in order to link it with the taxonomy. The same goes for the lichen functional traits. Next, please. And finally, to answer the third and fourth question, we can add climate and satellite-based indices. So the two classes in yellow. So we can link the distribution data, so the ID of the record, that point in time which was observed, to climate data, which hold, for instance, the number of precipitation in that month or in that year, and the average temperature in the year, or the temperature in that single moment the data was collected. And similarly, for the satellite-based indices, we have again the ID record, which is the key to link it to the distribution, and information such as the ENVRI, the normalized difference vegetation index, so the EVI, the next vegetation index. And with all these 5 classes, we can answer these 3 questions, and moreover also the last question. And next, please. This concludes the presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Piero. Are there any questions? Comment?
Yeah, I just, so thanks for an interesting presentation. I'm just wondering if people have already done this kind of work, but for other combinations of different organisms that are associated with each other.
Well, sure, I would say, because it's typical situation that happens often in ecology. Just think for plant pollinator networks, or for host parasite, and so on. So probably there could be easily some kind of template for this kind of, you would say, disease could be represented with a bipartite network, okay? So there could be a simple template to link this kind of relationship with 2 groups. Yeah, maybe then the plant functional traits, lichen functional traits, rather than the satellite-based indices are particular cases for this particular example, but they could be generalized.
Yeah, because I'm just imagining very naively now that this type of problem that you're describing, scientific questions, that is quite general as such. And what would happen if someone would launch some kind of artificial intelligence research that wants to look across many different types of interactions and associations, and they would go out and look for data. And then, of course, it needs machine actionable metadata and metadata models that are useful to support that. Otherwise, you would mix apple and orange, and you would get the banana out of it, which is not so good. So maybe there is a way to sort of lift this one layer up and think about it in a more generalized way. As well. I mean, of course, you need to do something that is really supporting your case and your research and makes that efficient, but maybe one can develop this further. That's just an observation.
Yeah, that's for sure. Thanks. Yeah. This was a kind of preliminary idea, kind of general framework for this kind of analysis. But yes, it was kind of not even a beta, but an alpha.
Sure, and one has to start somewhere. But I would just encourage you to maybe look in the literature or ask around in a broader ecological sense to see if you can get any good ideas and inputs, and of course also learn about things that were not working out so well, so that you can avoid falling into the same trap.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and now is a turn of Elisabetta Volpe.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. This is Elisabetta Volpe. I'm a junior researcher from the Benzi Foundation based in Bari. I want to present to you today the use case titled Verification Process and Fair Properties Evaluation of a Rare Disease Database. Next, please. Before going inside the use case, I provide just some information about the importance of the verification process in the context of the rare diseases. Data verification is essential to support the diagnosis, trials, development of therapies in the rare disease context, where knowledge and expertise are limited, patient population are geographically dispersed, data are often sensitive, sparse, highly distributed, and even heterogeneous. So harmonizing this data through the adoption of common data elements and ontologies increases both the interoperability and the utility of data by maximizing the potentiality of this limited amount of information and by making them more retrievable. The overall objective of this proposed use case is to set up a verification protocol to enable the transformation of an unfair compliant dataset into a fair dataset, collecting information, for example, about different kind of data about genetic variants, epidemiology, genotype, phenotype, and so on. The second objective is to evaluate the compliance with the FAIR principle by identifying a set of FAIR characteristics. Next, please. So 6 steps are defined in this workflow. The first step consists in investigating the data source in whatever forms it is available, checking the accessibility condition according, of course, to the GDPR or other national or local laws, and checking whether both the data representation and the meaning of the dataset are clear. Then it is important to check and eventually define metadata. The third step is the most important one, the verification process in which we need to make data, of course, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. The following steps plan to identify a set of metrics to measure fair compliance and the dataset adherence to these indicators, and to extract data from another database or website to fill eventual gap information at dataset level, and finally to publish the dataset database upon approval. I will try to implement the data interoperability by defining the semantic model to represent the data and ontologies. Please, next. I identified the 3 steps to build a semantic data model. First, creating a conceptual model which lists the main concepts and relationship between data elements. Ontologies are necessary to exactly define the concept and in the conceptual model in a machine-readable and linkable way. They can be found using, for example, search engines such as the bioportal. And ontology are typically field-specific and often even goal-specific. So true ontologies are strongly recommended to ensure interoperability in the rare disease domain. The first one is the orphanet rare disease ontology, and the second one is the human phenotype ontology. Finally, the conceptual model and ontology terms will be used to create a detailed semantic data model. The second phase will be to make the data and metadata linkable and machine readable. An example of a linkable machine readable global framework is of course RDF. And in this way, we hope to make data and metadata more fair and available for human and machine use. I am really new in these aspects. I learned a lot from the school, and for sure I will do my best to continue to investigate these arguments further. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Elisabetta. Are there any questions for Elisabetta? If not, we can. Okay, Emanuela Panteri.
Here I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, over to you.
Perfect. Well, the title of my presentation is Bring Your Own Use Case. Why is that? When I first read the email, I thought that it said bring your own case, suitcase, briefcase, whatever. Probably I need to travel ASAP. That's why. Next, please. I took a picture of my son's school case that I carried that moment as my first slide. Anyway, I do try to. I'm very anxious when I present, so I try to make fun of myself usually. So please go to the next slide. Well, the last 2 weeks I had the opportunity to participate in the ENVRI Community Winter School. That school meant a lot to me because it's relevant to the work that I do in the Hellenic Center of Marine Research. My role in HMR is a data an IT manager, so I don't develop anymore. But if I know earlier, I would have told to many of my colleagues to participate to that event so that they can follow what we already said those days. We spent several days. We want to verify several data in the HMR, so that school helped me a lot to understand how we can do that. That's why I did that cloud with the words to say that what I already know and what we already do is similar that what we did the previous days in that school. Go to the next, please. So I did not have the time to digest all what we said the previous days. I then didn't have the time to do all exercises, so I didn't know what to choose. As a first thought, I thought that we could use the data or metadata from the Metadata virtual lab that we have here in Lifewatch week node. Metadata provides a reliable and quality control marine species datasets and the metadata from all over the Mediterranean Sea. We store several datasets in an IPT, an integrated publishing toolkit, and I think that this is where we can start to verify our metadata. Next, please. What I will try to do next is to connect the dots, because many of the lessons that you did the previous days are similar to what we already have in the Lifewatch Week Node portal. We have a virtual lab that is called Data Services, that it uses Semantic. We have the Metadata that I already said that is uses visualization, so I could also use the Jupyter or what we saw in that lesson with ICOs and the carbon footprint. Also the metadata from the IPT, and I could use what we learn in cloud computing in the ENVRI lab. The ENVRI lab is a virtual lab also that uses an HPC cluster behind and run some R functions, and we're trying to containerize this lab, not in Docker, but in Singularity. So I think that this lesson was very familiar to what we already do. So I need to find some time to do the homework that they gave it to us. That's it. Next, I don't know if I have another. No, that's it. So thank you.
Thank you, Manuela. Any comments?
You don't have any? No.
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, why would you go for Singularity and not Docker?
Because we use many parallelization, and Singularity is better in that case. We have tried to do it with Docker, but we saw that the Singularity is better for that.
Mm-hmm. Are you working on remotely on high performance computers, or are you working on clouds?
On HPC.
On it, yeah. Then also it is yeah, I've gone through something similar. So it is also because you don't have the clearance, you don't have the authorization to run Docker as an administrator. So that's also part of the problem.
Okay. I don't know that detail. I think that I can bring you in touch with my colleague that runs the project if you want to talk with him and tell you more details in that. Okay.
That also works. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Okay, so now we have Giulio Verazzo.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Giulio Verazzo and I work here at the CNR, the Institute of Polar Sciences in Bologna. And here I present my use case that is on the next slide, please. There is a data center we are working at, and we are building this data center called the Italian Arctic Data Center, where we can have to gather data and metadata about the Arctic researches to make it easily accessible, visualizable, and retrievable, and also interoperable with other data centers, such as the one made by SciOS. Here we have also a tool to retrieve and visualize data on static plots. Next slide, please. One of the challenges we are facing these days is that researchers need a way to extract information from raw data that is collected from our instruments, and they need a way to filtering out measurement errors, apply normalization, do conversions, and extract data products from raw data in general. Now we have a custom-made tool that was written at least 10 years ago in PHP 5 to achieve this, but it's very hard to maintain and to extend because researchers are not very familiar with PHP. So next slide, please. I had an idea to use Jupyter Notebooks to achieve this by providing a Jupyter Notebook with forms where the researchers can describe the metadata for the data products they are producing, and programming cell where they can do the operation they need. Then, next slide, please. Where they submit the form, I imagine a workflow like this where the data is sent to approval, and an editor or administrator have to approve the work done by the user. And if it is not approved, the user received a not approved message, so he can work again on the solution. But if the solution is approved, then this becomes a new variable available inside the data center, and an automatic procedure can create the metadata for it to make it available for download and visualization. It's all. So thank you everybody for the attention.
Thank you.
Is there any question? Yes.
I have a quick question, just a curiosity. So you analyzed the possibility to starting from a program that has been custom made, so purposely made for the scope that you need, written in PHP. Why did you not analyze the possibility to use, for example, an open source software, for example, Metadata? I don't know if you know it.
The tool, the custom-made tool, is not made by me. It was made by another a colleague of mine 10 years ago. So I just joined the team 1 year ago. So I'm working on redoing the work in another way to extend it. So we want to get rid of this custom-made tool and use a new one, an open source one. So I was thinking about the Jupyter Notebook that seems to fit very well with the problem we are trying to solve.
So the answer from researchers is good, is fine.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions? Otherwise, we have Juliana. Okay. Monitor. Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I will present what the database I'm trying to build for the project I'm working on. So the project I'm working on now is called Taxon Time, and it stands for Tracing Taxonomic Knowledge Through Time. Next slide, Lucia, please. So what's the main idea of the project? No, so we know very often we treat the species name as something static. We take as a given, but we know it changes through time. And actually, very recently, after the 90s, there's quite a big shuffle of species names, species being reclassified because there are much more use of molecular analysis now when describing a species and define what a species is. So the idea of the project is that we trace these changes over time, and we see, let's say, the idea is that we see the changes in the species number when you look back, and also we try to assign a probability of change to a species name, because some species are more likely to be reclassified in the future than others. Yeah, it depends on how accurately that species was described, or if the species belong to a species complex, that's a complex group of taxon that is difficult to distinguish between them. So the main thing here, we are looking at changes of species names over time. And actually now what I'm doing, trying to build the database for this project. Next, Lucia, please. So from what I learned in the course, the steps to go there would be first to design an ontology. For that, I would need to search a vocabulary, right? Use terms that I already use. Then I need to implement the ontology and make the database accessible via databases catalogs, as we saw in the ENVRI, or others like the JRC, I think also has a database catalog. Several catalogs are available. And also that people can access the data using the Jupyter Notebooks that we saw with the ICOs. So I started number 4, please, Lucia. So I designed like a rough ontology, and well, okay, in this ontology, what did I try to relate? So I have the attributes of the species name, including the species and the author. That means when that species was described. Attributes of the authors of the species, like where is this person associate, where is this person born, is it like from which country is the botanist, which country the botanist work, and also attributes associated to the publication where the species name is described. So there are these 3 components to be described and somehow related to each other in this ontology. So next, Lucia, please. So then for that, I think the most appropriated vocabulary that I have at hand would be the Darwin core terms. And I had a look at that, and I think I did a little bit what Cedric did already, presented already. So I took these terms, and next, Lucia, please. So I went to the Protege and I populated the ontology there. But look, it is very poor now because the only thing I managed to do was to add the classes and the descriptions. And I was even confused, what is a description? What is the definition of a class? So there was a bit, for me, it was not so easy. And I tried to make the relationships there. And then there were 2 things that happened. Huh? First, I didn't manage to make the relationships because it was too complex. And the other thing is that I really have the impression that I'm trying to reinvent the wheel, because these things have been done already for sure. Because like species associated to synonyms, associated to author and publication, it's available like in the Kew Gardens webpage, the Missouri Botanical Garden webpage, at the GBIF. I really searched to download this ontology, the vocabulary and the relationship between these entities, but I really I could not find. So if somebody knows a way to make these things that I can use and then put it back what I have added on the database, I would be really happy. Next, Lucia, please. So if you have experience with that, please feel completely free to contact me for anything also related to the project, or if you build an ontology, if you download these things, I'm very available to talking to you. Thank you. That's it. Finished.
Thank you, Juliana. Any comments about this?
Yeah, I have some thoughts to share on part of Juliana's presentation. It's more like a comment than a question. I know that the Darwin Core as a standard, this is widespread in the ecology world. I've been involved into a project for the survey of biodiversity in Sweden, and Darwin Core was the foundation of such project. So, as far as I'm concerned, Juliana, you are on the right tracks for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like maybe as I don't know if it's the look on these ontologies that are available. I think there are many and many sources, right? As far as I understand, and also I saw from the presentations. I don't know if the ENVRI platform could put there like a list of resources where people like almost all of us have some component of working with species and species names. If there is like a list of ontologies that we can search, because if you search the whole web, like it's for someone with a little bit limited experience, so is it a good one? Is it not a good one? Is it used? Is it not used? So if there is like just a resource for the ENVRI to provide for the users would be helpful and would be good. Like once you have the data, the database built on ontology that you guys provide, it would be easier for us to put the data to your data catalog.
Juliana, here's Barbara. I will contact you because we are working on this too for the iAdopt, collecting all these resources. But I don't have it now ad hoc so that I can share it with you. But if I can, I would like to contact you.
Thank you, Barbara. That's super nice.
Yeah, so I think that's very valuable what you are doing.
So I have a comment also. So I know that, for instance, the people in the DISCO infrastructure, they are working also with species names, but of course then in the context of understanding how to catalog specimens and samples that exist in physical collections, like in museums and research institutes. So I've heard some presentations where they have also mentioned this puzzle or complication that there has been this development of species names and also the idea of what constitutes different species or subspecies, etc. So that could also maybe be a good contact point for you to get in touch with the DISCO team and find out what they are doing if you don't already have those.
Yeah, no, I think yes, but again, no, like when I see like the DISCO initiative is quite big, I try really to find what ontology they use. Can I download and just apply it? I really didn't find.
No, but I mean they are really only starting with their information, etc. I think it's mostly useful if you contact directly some person. So like Alex Hardesty or someone. I will see if I can find a good contact and I will put in the chat.
Super, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I also want to say that I think they are all in the process of making. So there's nothing you just can take. I think it's all in the process of being done better. So. But to contact Alex Hardesty and the people from DISCO is a very good idea, and I have also to do that. But I will come back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And the other challenge that because we see, let's say the name is dynamic, no? So when let's say the ontology has to be built in a way that's easily updated. When new names become available and new species are published or the names is shuffled, it has to be something that is easy to update. It has to be a dynamic, like a living organism almost.
Therefore, you need a very good governance model. Yeah, and
Yeah.
how there are lots of papers on that, but yeah, it's challenging. I know.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you again. Now we have Lorenzo Longobardi.
Yes, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, basically I tried to do to use some of the tools showed in the during the course and adapt them to my own data. I work with long-term phytoplankton data that are collected from different stations around the world. And these data are basically sampled according to local protocols. So they have their own formats, their own unit scales, and so on. So they need to be in some way standardized. And I tried to create something in order to let this data to communicate. So it's basically a platform where the user can search for data and then extract information from them, and to make also some statistical analysis on this data. So next slide, please. So this is from the point of view of the user. The user can select the station in a similar way to what we observed from the ICOS group. So I used my own data, just some, to give an idea of some of the stations that are in many coasts of the world. And next station, and the next slide, please. And so the user have the possibility to select the station, and I associated just for example some metadata to some of the stations using the Lifewatch ENVRI metadata catalog. And so the user can extract information from that, can understand which data is viewing, and the temporal coverage of data, and so on. And then the next step, the next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, it is something that I'm working on it. I just try to create something, is to create like a statistical analytical part of this process. And I used Air Shiny, that is like a interactive application for statistical analysis, in which the user can like compare different phytoplankton species. In this case, for example, you see that user can select the data, the variable, so the species, and the visualization type. So it can view the seasonal pattern of the species and compare the seasonal pattern of species at the different stations around the world, as well as time series patterns. I didn't find yet the way to integrate all the data in one single dashboard, and then the idea is also to give the possibility to user to extract some useful indexes, temporal indexes, like the trends of the species, and this kind of properties. And so the idea is to enlarge as much as possible this kind of data. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Other questions for Lorenzo? No questions. And the next, Olaf. Okay.
Lucia, may I ask which version of this?
The last one.
Could you have a look at the last slide?
Yes.
The two versions differ in the last slide a bit.
This is the last version that you sent me.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. And you can go back to the first slide, please. Okay. So hello, everyone. Okay. The title mentions what I called the greenhouse gas calibration chain. This is what our laboratory in Jena, as a part of ICOS, is involved with. How is shown in the next slide. Atmospheric stations which measure greenhouse gas concentrations do that against a set of calibration standards, but these are not directly provided to them by the central authority NOAA. Instead, a set of standards shown in black here of different levels is created, different levels are mixed. Each new level is calibrated from the standards of the previous level. The blue box shows what our laboratory does. Blue are the known concentrations of the different standard levels. And what is orange is additional data, which is either directly measured, as in the middle, the data designated as raw L2 and raw L3 concentrations, or is computed over a fairly complex net of relations. And please note that the only thing what we do export is shown at the bottom right. These are the mean level 3 concentrations. And every person outside has to trust that all these complex computations have been done by us in the best possible way. Of course, we try to be worth of that trust, but it would be legitimate for an outside person to want to check if we do it right, or even to apply a different procedure to the raw data and see if the results differ. But this is currently not possible, which is currently only a thought of mine, and it does not constitute a project. But when I looked into the FAIR principles, to my astonishment, I found that, as far as I can tell, the FAIR principles do not require us to publish the raw or intermediate data and the relationships at all. But this would be necessary for any outside persons to check what we do or to repeat it in a different way. Well, but if we do publish all this, then the FAIR principles do apply and require us to consider certain things. The next slide, please. And this is where this course was useful to me. I was introduced in a new topic to me in applying semantics, which seems to be a good way to specify the interrelation of the intermediate and raw data. In particular, I learned that it's good to assign unique PIDs to data units, not only URLs, because they can change. I learned that semantic data belonging to intermediate data could be stored in separate RDF files, and these separate RDF files again can be linked to the original data by web pages with semantic markup, which closes the local semantic net. So also we learned that OL2, for instance, can be used as a vocabulary for such RDF relationships, and we're introduced into the Prodigy program to construct ontologies. And the next slide is just from my exercise, an attempt to implement the scheme I showed you first into RDF triples based on O2. I learned that O2 has predicates even for class relationships, for parent and child classes. The blue arrows from the left upper OL thing are arrows from the parent class to child classes. There's another intermediate parent class in the middle. There are disjunct classes. I can't point with the mouse. And the more colored arrows are self-made predicates, which all resemble different kind of relationships between objects and subjects. There is still much for me to learn, would be still much for me to learn, provided that we will sometime take this up as a project, which I don't know. But the course was an introduction, the first introduction to this for me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Are there comments, questions?
Yeah, that's a very interesting application that you described there, Olaf. Have you been in contact at all with the ICOS Carbon portal about this and how we can support you?
Not yet, no.
We should arrange something, definitely, to build on this.
Okay. But let me stress again, this is not yet a project, just a thought.
No, but
help, okay. And
no, I just wanted to say it's important for us to capture this
Okay.
kind of information. So that's
Yes, okay.
great.
Okay.
Okay, so we can go on with Pierpaolo.
Okay, hi all. Okay, thank you very much, Lucia. So my presentation is very thin, just one slide, but okay. And I will talk about semantics and data models, trying to reason about the tools and implementation strategies that I can put in place in order to achieve the goal to create an institutional data service and service catalog. Okay, this is of course my personal elaboration of what I learned during this training. So okay, I am open to comments and suggestions. Okay, from my point of view, the hardest point of a virtual research environment building steps is the setup of a flexible and comprehensive data model that can describe efficiently all the properties and relationship between the entities that characterize the data in place. And this was the main motivation for asking to join this winter school, because given my role of IT technical and scientific support for the Marine Institute integration in Danubius research infrastructure, I will try to help scientists and researchers of my institute to share their data within this RI. The Marine Science Institute is the modeling node of Danubius RI and be responsible for the provision of methodologies and compliance of modeling outputs to Danubius RI Commons. It will use the data provided within the supersites for calibration and validation activities and provide modeling outputs as digital data for use among nodes and supersites. So my primary goal is to, in the close future, is to obtain a comprehensive knowledge of the best practice to build an effective RDF data model, for example, starting from the definition of all the metadata that will be required to properly describe those data sets. There is an ongoing survey on nodes and supersites of Danubius for collecting the metadata, and once those metadata set will be available, we will try to reason about how to define the model to describe on the data and services related to the infrastructure. Okay, Danubius has elected NetCDF as a data format, and the Institute is already leveraging Unidata threads server functionalities for time series and dataset analysis and visualization using the Web Map service protocol. And so another interesting task will be to investigate the proper way to integrate those services into the Danubius Array data portal. The thread service is built upon Apache Tomcat server and can expose data in a number of interoperable formats. For example, NetCDF already that I already told you about, and XML. It also offers opened up interface to integrate that gives other machines a way to obtain the full data set or to perform refined queries in order to extract only the portion of the data that is really needed. So for this reason, because the thread server is already built with some functionalities to harvest and to query the data it exposes, I think that it would be not so difficult to integrate in a data portal, or at least I hope so. Anyway, okay. Then in order to build the ontology for the metadata, I will also try to install my own version of the Protige server, because I found out that the web service that we used during the lesson is mainly a demonstrator and provides only limited set of functionalities. Installing my own version in my in-house infrastructure, I can, for example, import new ontologies and be able to create a more complex relation between data. Okay, then another step would be to identify to store the RDF model that will be the output of the previous process. I found out that there is an interesting survey on the storage approaches techniques, and I will try to investigate the difference and the various aspects of using a relational database, a text-based database, or even a NoSQL type of database. But this is just what I found searching on internet. I have to try to understand better which are the difference between those three types of storing data. And of course, if someone of you can give me an help in analyzing this aspect, okay, I will be very pleased to hear your comments. Okay, then the final point should be to create a Sparkle endpoint in order to provide the ability to query those the data model, and also with a search on the web, I found that there is the Virtuoso server that can implement those type of endpoint, and probably I will give it a try and try to understand how to integrate it in the final implementation of the portal. Okay, then finally, as a side work, I would like also to try the installation of Jupyter Hub in a Kubernetes cluster in order to provide researchers and scientists of my institute the ability to develop their tools for extraction, analysis, and visualization, just like ICOS team showed us during the presentation last week. I would like to implement my own Jupyter app because the ICOS Carbon Portal implementation has a limit on the session time. So if you stay inactive for more than 50 minutes, then okay, all the data are lost. While my plan is to use a Kubernetes cluster, is to create a deployment in a cluster with a couple of pods that can leverage a HFFS persistent volume. And so whichever pod you connect to, they will write in read and write many way to the same persistent storage, and so data will never be lost. One challenge will be to integrate this installation of Jupyter App with our institutional authentication server, which is an LDAP, of course, in order to use the institutional credential to access to the service. Okay. And finally, I will also give a try to the first functionality of Jupyter Notebooks, because I think that it is a quite interesting tool. Okay, and that's all for me. Many thanks.
Thank you, Pierpaolo.
You're welcome.
Any comments, suggestions for Pierpaolo?
So I don't know if Carolina is on the call and would just like to comment on this 15-minute limitation that we had, of course, for the Explore data setup. It's not an inherent thing of the ICOS Jupyter installation as such, but for this specific implementation.
Yes, yes, Maggie. Well, it's a limitation that we have posed in order not for all users that have logged in to use our service on Explore Data and are interested just to have a look around, and then forget to close their notebooks and log out, and keep or protect us from having that session running in vain, and keeping our resources engaged. And this is why we have posed this limitation. This is something that, yeah, we have done to protect our resources. It's as simple as that. I don't know if that answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah, so for our publicly available service, of course, the services that we have for researchers and support people who are really working with data for scientific purposes, they don't have this kind of limitation, just to be clear.
Exactly, exactly. And also okay. There, even if we do an update on some part of our modules, etc., this is something that if let's say our current users in our collaboration Jupyter instance, they will not be affected. They will need to have to restart their server in order for the changes to apply for them, their own account, let's say. So they will not be affected in that case. So we do not interfere with the work of our registered users in any case, so that no information is lost and no ongoing process, if they have an ongoing job that is running, will be discontinued or interrupted.
Hello, I have a comment or a question. So yes, it was very interesting. Thank you for the presentation. I was just thinking, I'm not sure if this is what understood is right. You're planning to go from netcdf data that is already in a thread server to a database model. Why are you planning to do so? Like, what's the advantage of going from threads, from data it's already stored in a format and like netcdf in threads, and going to a database? Is it, I don't know, to use our RDF model, or what's the advantage of that?
No, well, of course, the thread server is largely used in my institution. So, so I was just reasoning on a way to integrate it in the future Danubius platform. So okay, I know that it already stores data formatted in this open format, and then I was just looking. I will just look for the correct and best way to integrate the description in netcdf format with the broader description of the data model. So this is what I was trying to say in my presentation. I don't know if it is clear now.
Yes, okay. So you're, if I understood right, you are talking about the, let's say, metadata of the netcdf, or also the data itself?
No, well, I will start. I think that we will start from netcdf set of metadata already integrated and already used in the institute, and then try to extend those set in order to integrate the data provided by the institute with the Danubius portal. There is an ongoing process for defining the world research infrastructure metadata set, and so we will try to integrate the metadata already used in the threads simulation in order to create a comprehensive infrastructure.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, now, sorry, Pablo, for skipping you, but I have something, okay, here. So now you can go with your presentation. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Sophia. Hello, everyone. Today is the CTD Appreciation Day in Twitter, and it's not a joke. And for this, I will present like a tool to boost fairness in ocean vertical profile datasets. CTD it means conductivity, temperature, and depth, and it's an instrument used in oceanography to make vertical profiles. It's the main tool to monitor ocean waters and address issues like climate change. The next one, please. Well, the problem is that in my institution, we make a lot of research cruises, and the technician on the research vessel feels like a form that is converted to a metadata describing the cruise. But when we have to also take the file data that comes from this instrument, the raw data, and we have to do a lot of things with that, and many tasks, like for example, to cut data that are not valid, a quality control check of all the data, check if the metadata sent by the technician is correctly, add to this metadata different controlled vocabularies, and finally we have to reformat all the data to a standardized format. Why? Because we send all this metadata and also the data to European repositories like CDataNet to share the data in a fairness way. The problem is that we have to employ many softwares, at least 5 different softwares to do all these tasks. For example, in a cruise that we can have, imagine 100 CTD profiles, we have to do also 100 metadata files and link all this to the metadata of describing the research vessel. This takes a long time. Then I try to make a solution that is a web page with a form where you provide the metadata given by the technician that describes the things that were taken in the research vessel, and also the raw data from the instrument. The next one, please. Well, just with providing the files, the software makes everything. I mean, it passed different tests, like for example, density, if is valid the date and the time, density inversion test, if the instrument is in the range, or for example, if the vessel navigated too fast between 2 stations, because this means that maybe the location of the station is bad, or maybe the time writing by the technician is bad. Okay, the software makes all these things and also creates the metadata according to the ISO 19139 specifications. And finally, if it's not valid, you can correct your data and restart again the process. But if it's valid, you can click the button and directly you obtain a zip file with all the data and metadata. The next one. In the zip file, you can have different figures where when you go, in these figures, you can also appreciate the quality check. The data in this reformatted to the standardized requirements by CDataNet that includes also the common vocabularies and different ontologies, and the metadata. That is one file per vertical profile. And the next one. The next slide, Lucia, please. Okay. Now that I did that software and it's working fine, but after the virtual research environment and cloud computing lectures, I was thinking about whether a web application like this one is the best way to operate. Because maybe at this moment I have more questions than before starting the course. And many of them come from how to begin to undertake the learned tasks. I mean, how would benefit this web app from cloud computing? Or would it better to deploy just a notebook and let the users to adapt it to their needs? Or maybe it would be better to write a Jupyter notebook and containerize the cells instead of doing all this web app with flags that is very complex to maintain? Or how can I benefit from UDAT services? For example, could be this web application as service in a bigger infrastructure? For example, my example is running individually in a virtual machine. And what if I want to deploy more apps? Should I deploy them in the same virtual machine, create a new one, or use Kubernetes technology to do that? I feel like there are too many possible paths to take, and I recognize that at this moment I'm a little bit lost, but I think that many points of this course will benefit my work, of course. And thank you.
Thank you, Pablo. Are there any questions?
So yes, Sumin. So I would like to comment a little bit about those questions you raised. It's very valid questions. I think many of us, when you start to use as a service-oriented architecture and cloud computing, they all face similar questions. So one way actually to find the path to solve those issues, I think you should think a little bit from the user perspective. What are the kind of features the user needs, and what are the kind of let's say possible features which may get overloaded if the number of users, if the volume of data increases. The path should be scalable. Try to understand that part first. Basically, the technology behind the surface is less important for the user. It's more, let's say, for you as the provider. The user basically care is the quality. It's about user usefulness and how the quality it is, response time, all those things. So I think first you should look at the current application you have and try to understand the functionality of the service you're going to deliver, and then the quality metrics. With minimum efforts of changing your technologies, first try to see using either VMs or containers, what's the way can reach those quality metrics. With some iterations, basically cloud itself is very programmable. It's not a single technology force you to do this or on that way. Basically, since you can always customize it and make it in a way, make the infrastructure even as the code, which be part of your service operation. So I think the important thing is to try to adopt this kind of way of thinking. See if start from some simple cases and make it first operational and online, get feedback, and then improve this through iterations.
Okay.
Okay. And just a curiosity from me, what about performance? Since yes, it's a web application. How is it developed? In which technology?
I developed in Python with a Flask to serve in a web server. But I recognize that for me was quite difficult because I'm not an IT expert, but it works. And now you can process, for example, 100 CTDs in 1 or 2 minutes. And in the other way, it would take 2 mornings, for example. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Several hours.
What about the size of the file, the time? Okay, so it depends obviously on the input. Okay, thank you.
Maybe if just I could add something. Well, I fully agree with what Ziming said before. The requirements posed by your users and what your target user groups are is defining what their requirements are, and also what you want from them is one of the most important things, and then you can adapt your software accordingly. But just to say a few words of kind of why ICOS chose to use notebooks, just as an idea, or to explain why we do it, is kind of a way because we want to provide a platform for users, researchers and scientists to collaborate using our data. And at the same way, we want them to, it's a way of promoting our data and our metadata and the fairness of our data, but also a way to increase collaboration between the data the data we provide, and the scientific community. And we found that in that term, the Jupyter Notebooks was the software that would attract more attention and give us more users. Just something for you to think about. It's not necessarily the best software if you just want to show your data on the web. there might be better solutions to do that for. It depends always on what you want to get from a user perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina, for your comments.
Yeah, I think Shiming's point about continuously getting feedback from your different end user groups and adopting or adjusting your services to that is extremely important. And so that's really a difficult thing. How do you do that in the best way? But to get started with that as early as possible in your development process, because there's nothing worse for everyone involved if you develop, so to speak, a perfect service, but it's no longer really what people are asking for in the end after 2 years of development.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Now we have Stephanie. Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much, Lucia. And first of all, I want to thank all the trainers because I learned so much after these 2 weeks. I'm quite limited in my IT knowledge. So to me, fair data and open data simply meant making my data accessible to everyone. And I did not know what it meant to get there. And I think after these 2 weeks, I put this quote there because it sums up what I learned, which is really that there's a whole process and infrastructure that we have to put together to make the data, prepare the data. And then it also opens up more possibilities with that data, how it can be used. So if you can give me the other slide, please. As a case study, I'd like to present to you one of our initiatives that we have in the Institute of Atmospheric and Earth System Research in Finland, in Helsinki, with the University of Helsinki. So what we're trying to do with this PEX program, which is a pan-Eurasian experiment program, is we are building a community and a network of science around climate and environmental change and air pollution. What is very particular about this initiative is that we really are trying to also bring Russia and China together into this network. So rather than having data and research infrastructures and networks all fractured around this area, we want to bring it together. So I think it's really important, especially the region that it's focusing in. So one of our focuses in this program are highlighted in these yellow squares. So in addition to doing having a research agenda that really covers land, atmosphere, marine ecosystems, and so on, we also have the area of focus in research infrastructures in this area, in this region, and also knowledge transfer, which involves education process, education training programs in this region, and also student mobility. So we try to get students to, for example, come to Helsinki, be trained here, and vice versa, and have research visits and so on, which again is to foster a community in this area. And then also impact in society, which we want to also work with making policy-related research summaries for informed decision making, and also in general with the public. However, the challenge with this is that while it's extremely ambitious and it's very big and it covers a very, very big area, is that it's still, if you go to the website of PEX, or if you look at most of our documents, they're all basically text. So this is not very helpful. After seeing what you can do, for example, with the Lifewatch metadata catalog or the ICOS portal, I mean, it can really benefit to become modern in a way, and not just have shared PDF files and so on. We do, under the umbrella of PEX, we have a lot of projects in this area and also with the Arctic, but they are, again, as I said, they're fragmented. So you can maybe find information here and there and links to those projects, but again, it would really benefit to put it all together. And I think one of the main things I will do after this 2 weeks is to try to build some sort of metadata catalog that involves putting together all this and also designing some sort of virtual research environments. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Here's an example of what we do have already, which, like I said, it's really focused on text. So we have an e-catalog cataloging Russian infrastructure, research infrastructures. And this is really important to know, for example, across Iberia and this really extensive area where you can have infrastructures and what their focus is on, what kind of instrumentation you can find and who the contact people are. But this is still just PDF. So this would be one example of how we can benefit from a metadata catalog. And then the next slide, please. I guess we have tried to do some previously an attempt at this. We have the PEX view, but it only contains data for 2 months of 2008. Here are some stations in the PEX region. Some of them do have a link to the infrastructure website, but others don't. So something like Lorenzo presented in his presentation, doing a map with linking all the metadata to all the research infrastructures would be great. So the next slide, please. Yeah, so one of the things that I'd like to, like I mentioned, I'd like to do, and this is stemming from the examples that we have seen from the metadata catalog of Lifewatch and the ICOS portal and the working with the Jupyter Notebooks is that the steps I believe we have to take is choosing and defining a metadata scheme and a protocol of how we're going to be gathering data or rather creating this metadata catalog for PEX. And then of course that will include having a data set catalog, putting together all this, linking all these projects that fall under the umbrella PEX to make a one compilation of the data that is available for this region. And I think that would be a very good service to provide. Another one is this research infrastructure catalog. So also again with this mapping and metadata catalog to help do that. And then and as a research environment or virtual labs, that would be also great too, so that just like Carolina just mentioned about building bringing users and having them also collaborate with each other. I think this would be very important, especially again across this region of China, Russia, and Europe. So for that, I think we have to build or make use of software like the Jupyter Notebooks and use them for PEX related research, and then also create data visualization options. I saw from ICOS portal that you have also with the Jupyter Notebooks, you have similar exercises for schools, for example, and I think that's a great application that we should also work with, since it is part of our knowledge transfer and impact areas. And then also have a toolkit where the PEX community itself could also be building and sharing with each other tools to make visualizations and so on, that because they would know what kind of needs they have. So it would be built by the community for the community. And then additionally, I had this idea that I guess this could also lead to some sort of citizen science lab, so that we bring in people to also work with the data and perhaps contribute to the science as well. So that's my, so thank you again. Those are ideas I really want to do, and I hope I can soon start this.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Are there questions for her? Comments?
I have a comment.
Please.
Actually, it's more a compliment. The project, what you're trying to put together, it sounds really nice and ambitious. It was really impressive. For the collaboration, because I try to do the same, more or less the same, and I would like to know a bit your experience and how, I mean, using this case of the Jupyter Notebook, how could that work? Let's say to foster collaboration, right, in such a platform. how can we avoid it? It's a top-down thing? Because what, for instance, I try to put people from tropical Africa and the Amazon to work together. But at the end is a top-down thing, and like usually collaboration comes from bottom up, right? And also people from the ICOs, they provide the tools and people can collaborate. How are you think like to engage and also people at the ICOs, how to engage that everyone can really make that we can shape the tools and the tools can shape us in a way that we all kind of use it. That is not top down. Is it clear, my comment?
I think so, but Ute, do you want to take this, or Maggie, or should I try and answer?
Go ahead, Carolina.
Sorry, Ute? Yeah. Okay, so the first thing that you kind of need to do, if you are not in direct, let's say, a contact with these researchers, you just want to invite them to use your platform, if I understand now the question correctly, is that you need to kind of promote and inform them that you have such a tool available. And how ICOS does this in a way is because we have on our webpage a dedicated page that explains Jupyter Notebooks and our services. Because ICOS did not come up like just of thin air, it's an initiative that has been in the works for a long time, and before it materialized, let's say, it sits upon a big network, let's say, of scientists that collaborate together. So we kind of had these collaboration groups a priori, in a way, if we can say that. So the Jupyter Notebooks, and Ute knows much better than me because she's the one that started it for the ICOS Carbon Portal, was a way for ICOS Carbon Portal to collaborate with specific scientists within separate domains, so the domain of atmosphere, ecosystem, and ocean. And there the contacts were already in place. Of course, well, the knowledge of us having this tool was then, let's say, transferred from mouth to mouth, or it became known. And then, in order to, let's say, ease the collaboration between different people working in different projects, what our Jupyter collaboration form allows us is that we can have different groups of people collaborating within the same platform, and the work that they do inside that group is only visible to the accounts, to the Jupyter accounts that have access to this group, and not to the other groups. So there we can ensure the security of what they develop, which is very important. I'm not sure if I answered your question now, but also what I need to say as well is that in the ICOS webpage, we also include information for people to apply if they want to have an account on our Jupyter Hub and they are related to a project. So let's say also, in order to protect our resources, again, in a way, we only provide an account to our closed Jupyter collaboration platform to people that are involved in a project that involves ICOS. If people just want to see what kind of data we have and what kind of notebooks we have developed, we have the open service, which is Explore Data, and it's the service that you have been working on during the courses. So that's what we use. It's kind of like more of our face to the outer world Jupyter-wise. That's Explore Data, and there people can test. If they then have an idea and they come up with a project involving ICOS data, then of course they can apply, and we can create a project and a group and an account for them and their collaborative and the people they collaborate with in the collaboration, the Jupyter collaboration platform.
And maybe I can add that you also need to start this collaboration by like providing an example Jupyter Notebook, which is still easy enough to understand to get the others to collaborate on this notebook. And then as soon as they see how easy it is for them to use ICOS data in these Jupyter notebooks, there's an incentive for them to continue working with this. So that was at least the way we started it.
Thank you very much. That was very clear.
May I say something? So that's more general statement to the Jupyter Notebook. So I hope really that this is a good way to engage scientists to use some more technical procedures, because you can prepare everything and they just run it and see how they can use this. And I think this is really, as you said before, incentive probably for them to make their data fairer. And this is what I hope also to achieve with my PhD study. So I just wanted to say that it's also my hope.
Yes, we of course hope that this will continue and that we still can maintain the interest in our Jupyter services.
Can I ask a question about, do you know how much users you actively have in your notebooks?
So we don't count the number of users using the Explore data, so we don't know, but I think for the project specific, this collaborative Jupyter Hub, we have around, I don't know, 40, 50 collaborators. They are not all active at all times. Sometimes it's really that they work in a project and that they develop notebooks, use them for the project, and then the project is over, and only if they have a new project, all related to ICOS, they start again. But some are continuously working on it.
So I just wanted to make the comment that I think one really good benefit of this providing this controlled, in some sense, platforms is that you can sneak in stuff like fairness and really help people to automatically work with that, or just, for instance, this providing the citation strings that for data and stuff like that. So that the researchers using the data or looking at it, they don't have to worry about how do I extract this information. It's just there. And you can also keep track of provenance for them behind the scenes and all of these things. So I think that's really adding to the data fairness as well.
Okay, we can go now for the last presentation by Zhendong.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Zhendong Wu. I'm a postdoc in ICOS Common Portal. Here I'm going to share what I learned from this winter school and also how I apply this knowledge to my current work. Next slide, please. So currently I'm working with the FluxPart model. So I'm going to run this model and post-processing the model output. FluxPart is going to simulate the footprint at ICOS atmospheric station. You may already know what is the footprint. When the station measures CO2, for example, the footprint will tell you where this CO2 comes from. With this footprint, and together with the CO2 flux data, we're going to calculate the CO2 concentration at these stations. So which kind of topic of this winter school will be applying my current work is cloud computing and also data analysis and visualization. Next slide, please. So I will go for the cloud computing first. So I will create a Docker image in ICOS Cloud. In this image, will include the Ubuntu system and also FluxPart model. Then build multiple containers, let's say 20. Then each container we're going to run the flux part model to simulate a footprint for each for one station. In this case, so we can simulate 20 stations at one time. And our plans are going to simulate all the footprint for the stations across Europe. With this footprint, next slide, please. When we get this footprint, we are going to use CO2 flux, for instance, the human emissions, biospheric flux, ocean flux, to calculate the CO2 concentration at a station. And this CO2 concentration generated by the flux part will be evaluated by station measurements. And also it will be compared to the other models as well, for instance, steel model. For the visualized footprint and calculate the CO2 concentration and visualize CO2 concentration, and all this process, I plan to use the Jupyter Notebook to do the data analysis and visualization. At last stage, we were going to plan to publish all the data output in ICO's Carbon Portal, just like steel model output, which is presented by our colleague Wood last week. So that's it. I'm going to share about that and welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there comments or questions for me? Okay, so if not, I will suggest to have a 5 minutes break, and then we will have a very rapid and quick closing session so that we can close the winter school with very few slides and some talks and feedback. In the meantime, I would like to put here in the chat. You already have it, but I will do it here on the page of the training platform. At the end of the page, you will find the feedback form. So please, it's very useful and important for us in order to improve our future events. It's anonymous, so it only takes 2 minutes, maximum 3. So here there is a feedback form, and we can come back in 5 minutes, 5-6 minutes. Okay.
Sorry, Lucia. What about the chef rally?
Yeah. The winner will be communicated during the closing session.
Yeah, nice.
Lucia, I have a question maybe also for afterwards. Are we going to share the emails of the participants if you want to contact each other? Because I have, from few people I got the emails, but others I didn't. So is it possible that we share?
If everybody agrees, yeah, we only put in CCN because of the privacy issues and GDPR. Yeah. If somebody doesn't want to be contacted, can send me an email. If I receive no emails, I can send you an email with you in CC so that you can see all participants there. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are the participants or also the PowerPoints?
The PowerPoints or the participant?
Yeah. I thought that Juliana asked also for the PowerPoints.
Actually, I just asked for the emails. But
okay.
For the PowerPoints, yes, we will also discuss about it later.
So, Lucia, I think for the participant PowerPoints, we should not necessarily put them on the training platform, but we should find an alternative repository where we can share this information just now with the participants.
Yes, we can choose the best option.
Okay. See you in 5 minutes.
Okay.
See you.
Okay, we are back. Everything, but is there? Yes, okay. Okay. First feedbacks are coming, so thank you very much. Okay, I think that we can start so that maybe we can close at noon or 5 minutes at maximum later. Okay, I can also activate the presentation now since I not need the other screen. Okay, so just a little overview of the participants. You were 31 of 12 nationalities, so a very interesting mix. And the attendance of the winter school has been very active. We had a mean of 30, 28 participants according to different lectures. In relation to position and job type, according to the answers that you gave us in the registration form, the most part of participants are technical staff or staff of research infrastructure and PhD student. These are the biggest, the bigger part of you. Okay, in relation to the skills, I told you in the first day on January 11th, this was the result of this question. We would like to see if something has changed. So I will activate our Mentimeter. Present. I have to change screen, sorry. Okay. So you can go to menti.com and use this code. I don't know if you remember your old questions, your old answers, but we hope that something will change.
Can you again put the link to the Mentimeter? Sorry, or the code?
Menti.com.
Is there? Is there? Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
The mean was 1.9 and now 2.5. Okay, we have 12 answers. We will wait for the other. Yes, we should have also at least, we had 32 answers, so we should be near, but nobody is anxious that we have the same participant today. We can arrive maybe at 20, So other 5 answers, okay, 16. Because we are 28. Okay. 17. For somebody is not a good number, not for me, but 17. 17 is top. Yes. Okay, 17. And then, okay, we will. Okay, this is a very interesting feedback that we would like to have on the Wonder platform, because it was our first use, and we would like to know if it was useful. So how do you rate the Wonder platform from 0 to 5? Not so useful or strongly useful? In the next question, we will ask you if it is more suitable, more appropriate for social purposes or for collaborative purposes. This is only a rate. Yeah. Okay, we will not use anymore.
Lucia, it's a little bit difficult to understand what to answer here, because you have these 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to add something, but what is what here?
What is it?
What does the 0, 1, 2, etc. mean? Or is it only the first one that we should respond?
No, it's a sort of rating for the tool from 0 to 5, and 0 means not so useful, and 5 is strongly useful.
Yes, but each of them has a slider from not so useful to useful, and that's why it's kind of weird.
It's not only one question? No, okay, so sorry, maybe a setting problem. Okay, so we can skip to this one, maybe it's better. And I hope that is not this question has not the same issue. Are we able to see the 3 options, and you can choose between 1, 2, and 3?
Yes, now it's more logical. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we have 14. Okay. So thank you again. And we can go on. This was the last question on Mentimeter. Okay, thank you. Okay, now the most interesting part. In relation to the past 3 challenge, we had the jury composed by 5 members. It was very hard to decide because for somebody was a very challenging task, really. But we appreciated a lot your picture. We received also very funny picture, Jose. And this is more or less, yes, the results, because we have at least 5 participants. So this was the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. His 5th version was vegan version, so something new for us here in Salento, but it was an option. And the winner is Stephanie. You can unmute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah, that is a Mexican who lives in Finland that did an Italian pastry. So congratulations also for the pictures. And she enjoyed the challenge very much. So thank you. You will receive a special prize. We will use the address that that you gave us during registration and that we already used for the cup. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
May I say something? Because you said that in Lecce you are not used to vegan. Actually, I was surprised because Dario Papale told me in Lecce 3 years ago that he is vegan, and he inspired me. So I learned to become vegan because of the meeting in Lecce.
Yeah, but we also have the different options, the vegan option, the no gluten, the several kind of cream inside. Yeah, but it was just a joke for us.
I know, it was also a joke. And I tried it out, and it was not so good as the original one, but it was nice to try it out.
We hope that everybody can join the real one as soon as this emergency will finish.
If I can add something, is that if you prepare it the vegan way, then it gets harder, because without eggs you don't have a proper binding agent, so that should also be taken into consideration.
Yeah, and this was the option of for Barbara it was most challenging. This slide was for, sorry?
Stephanie made the original recipe or vegan?
I used Lucia's recipe. And
original. Okay, good.
But with the addition of special ingredients from the lemon.
Yes, of course, I used Mexican lime.
This was the difference, yes. Okay. So in relation to feedback, I've already said to you that the feedback form is available in the training platform at the end of the page of the course. I will let it open, maybe it's until today 6 p.m. I will go through next Monday to be sure that everybody is able to send the feedback. And in relation to the follow-up, I've added now also something else, because next week you will receive by mail the certificate of attendance for those who sent the report and presentation. And since we are very interested in hearing your story, your use cases, for somebody there were some technical issues in relation, for example, to microphone, to connection. Somebody can't join the meeting today for other working meetings, other deadlines. So we will consider also to arrange a separate follow-up session, so you will be informed, and obviously you can choose to participate or not. So stay tuned. And as already told before, according to the GDPR issue, we are asking you to provide us the permission to use and reuse some of the outcomes of the school, because it's useful for us in terms of reporting for the ENVRI project, work package 6. And maybe we will also include some anonymous summary of a presented use case in order to describe which were the outcomes of the school. And then according to Juliana request, we can also share among participants your name and emails. So if somebody is against this for any reason, please send us an email sorry, within next Monday, so that we can organize our stuff next week. I think that yes, from my side it's more or less everything. I don't know if Nicola, Maggie, if you want to add something else.
Yes, for sure. I would like to thank you, Lucia, first, because she's worked very hard behind this the organization of this winter school. I would like to thank you. Sorry, there is my daughter that is playing piano. It was not organized.
So.
I would like to thank you, all the core team of the work package 6 that also worked behind the winter school, in particular Maggie, Jaco, Maria, Angeliki, Maria Teresa, Harry, Monique. I would like also to thank you, all the teachers. Thank you for the availability and all the effort put in this. Thank you also to Jiming that has co-organized with me on the part of the course. And thank you all to all the students, because we hope that we reached our goals, and we hope that next time the school will be done in person, in real. Thank you very much.
Yes, I can only fully agree with Nicola. So thank you, everybody, teachers, participants, and organizers. I think this was very successful, and I really hope that we can that the word is spread around, and that of course most of the course materials will be available afterwards also. So spread it to your colleagues if you want to return and listen to the videos again, or watch the materials, or etc. That's a good resource. So thanks to everyone.
Okay.
Yeah,
so...
many thanks to everyone. I will also have to especially thank the organizers there in Lecce for being able to organize this online meeting, because it's not easy to change your mind and to try to organize such an event in this way. And thanks a lot, and congratulations for the successful outcome.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is the time to say goodbye to all. Hope we will see soon in person. Bye.
Be a nice experience.
Thank you.